Economic analysis starts with data. Unfortunately, real-world data are rarely tidy. Welcome to EconWorks. The episode explores how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing empirical economic analysis by helping economists prepare, organize, and explore confidential company datasets before formal modeling even begins. Topics include why business data is a mess, data preparation assistance by AI, identifying patterns and spotting anomalies, Monte Carlo simulation, human judgment versus automation, the future of empirical analysis in competition policy. Artificial intelligence speeds up technical work dramatically, freeing the economist to spend more time interpreting evidence and developing strategy.
I want you to imagine, just for a moment, a feeling of, well, sheer unadulterated professional panic. You are a lead economist. You have been tasked with proving that a massive multi-billion-dollar corporate merger is perfectly legal.
Right, which is no small feat.
No, exactly. You have to prove it's pro-competitive and absolutely will not harm consumers.
Yeah.
And the stakes are just astronomical. The financial markets are watching your every move. The company's board is, breathing down your neck.
Yeah, the pressure is immense.
And the antitrust regulators, whether that's the FTC, the DOJ, or the European Commission, they are all just waiting for your defense. But when you ask the merging companies for the evidence to prove your case, they don't hand you some neatly bound report.
I mean, that would be nice, but no.
Right. Instead, you are confronted with petabytes of messy, chaotic, completely unorganized internal data spanning a decade. It is this digital avalanche of raw transactions, and your job is to find the truth buried somewhere at the bottom of it before the regulatory clock runs out.
It is a genuinely terrifying scenario. But the reality is that until very recently, that was just the standard operating procedure in antitrust economics. I mean, people naturally tend to think of antitrust cases as these dramatic, high-stakes courtroom showdowns, right?
Yeah, like something out of a movie.
Exactly. They picture the gavel banging, the tense cross-examinations of CEOs, the impassioned opening statements. But the real battle is fought and very often definitively won or lost in the trenches of data preparation. And that happens months or even years before anyone ever sets foot inside a courtroom. If your underlying data is flawed, your entire economic model collapses and, well, the merger gets blocked.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is exactly the mission for today's deep dive. We're exploring the intersection of artificial intelligence and antitrust economics. We're looking at this incredible series of sources today from EconWorks, specifically their Age of AI series. And we want to understand how AI is completely transforming the way economists handle the remarkably messy reality of corporate data during merger reviews.
It's a profound structural shift in the profession, really. But to fully grasp how artificial intelligence is changing the game here, we first have to understand why this specific game was so notoriously difficult for human economists to play in the first place.
Right.
And that means we have to look closely at the architecture of the raw data itself.
Welcome to the data dump, basically. Let's talk about the reality of modern mergers. Because when two massive companies decide to merge and inevitably fall under investigation by competition authorities, they get hit with what regulators call a second request.
Yeah, the dreaded second request.
Right. The government essentially demands everything.
Yeah.
And the companies don't just hand over a beautifully formatted executive summary.
Not at all. The economists assigned to these antitrust cases are given years and years of highly confidential, granular information. I mean, we are talking about raw sales ledgers, complex pricing files that factor in thousands of variable rebates. Yeah, individual customer transactions, intricate marginal cost information, and just an endless stream of internal business documents. And the core problem, the real reason this is so extraordinarily difficult, is that this data was collected for day-to-day business operations.
It wasn't made for regulators.
Exactly. It was collected by different departments to make sure invoices got paid on time or, warehouse inventory was tracked. It was absolutely not collected with rigorous long-term economic analysis in mind.
Right. It's not like the IT director who set up a company's sales database 10 years ago was sitting there thinking, I wonder how this specific column header will look to an antitrust regulator in 2026.
Right, they were just trying to get the software to work for Friday's payroll.
Exactly.
Oh.
I like to think of it as an analogy. It's like buying a house, and instead of giving you the blueprints, the previous owner just dumps 10,000 unlabeled boxes of receipts and building materials in your living room.
That's a great way to put it.
And then they ask you to prove the house is structurally sound based on that pile. You're dealing with legacy ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems that fundamentally do not want to talk to each other.
Well, they hate talking to each other.
Yeah, Company A might be using a highly customized instance of Oracle from 2015, and Company B might have this wild patchwork of homegrown CRM software and SAP databases.
That reverse engineering analogy is spot on, because when you open up those massive databases, what you find is just riddled with systemic imperfections. You
Yeah.
have inconsistent formats across thousands of files because, well, different regional offices use completely different software logic.
Right, of course.
For instance, net revenue in the North American system might include shipping costs, while net revenue in the European system explicitly excludes them.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare to sort out.
It is, and you have missing observations where a salesperson just forgot to enter a data point or used a placeholder like 99999 just to bypass a required field.
I've definitely done that on web forms.
We all have. But you also get duplicate records from system migrations that went slightly wrong. You even have changing product definitions over time. Maybe the company rebranded a product midway through a fiscal year, but the tracking codes in the back end didn't update, or they merged two SKUs together.
So how did they deal with it before?
Traditionally, reconciling all of this took economists and their teams of data scientists weeks of incredibly tedious, manual, custom SQL coding labor before any actual antitrust analysis could even begin.
But now, as the EconWorks material points out, there is a new super janitor in town.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is stepping in to do all that heavy lifting of data preparation.
Exactly. AI is stepping in as the ultimate data janitor, and it is dramatically reducing the time required to organize, clean, and explore these massive data sets.
Because it doesn't need to sleep.
Right. AI is uniquely suited for this specific type of bottleneck because it handles repetitive, systematic work without ever experiencing fatigue. It doesn't lose focus after staring at millions of rows in a database for 12 hours straight. But it's not just a basic automated script either. It is using natural language processing and semantic mapping to actually understand the context of the data fields.
Let's dig into the how of that for a second, because the sources are really specific about what this super janitor is actually doing under the hood. It's not just, finding and replacing text.
No, not at all.
It's standardizing wildly inconsistent formats by understanding the relationships between them. It detects obvious data entry errors instantly, like recognizing that a price entered as $10,000 is statistically impossible for a product that normally sells for $10.
Right, it spots the fat finger mistakes.
Exactly. It flags missing values, produces summary statistics, and visualizes the data so economists can see the overall landscape. But the thing that really stands out to me is how it identifies patterns across millions of observations that a human team, no matter how well trained, would almost certainly overlook just due to the sheer volume of it.
Yes, and a prime example of that from the research is how AI spots complex selection bias.
Oh yeah, explain that one.
Well, it might flag that one specific geographic region has much more complete data than others. A human analyst working under a tight deadline might just be, frankly, relieved to have a clean subset of data and just start crunching the numbers to build their model.
You just run with it.
Right. But the AI will step in and point out, wait, 90% of your clean usable data is coming from the Northeast region. But this is a national merger being reviewed on a national level. If you build your economic model solely on this Northeast data, your results will be heavily skewed and misrepresent the entire country.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here and push back on this a bit.
Go for it.
Because if you are relying on AI to map these databases, flag outliers, and spot selection bias, aren't you introducing a massive black box problem into a highly sensitive legal proceeding?
That is the big question.
Right. Antitrust cases require mathematically provable evidence. How do economists or regulators trust that the AI didn't just hallucinate a pattern? If it's mapping product A to product B using semantic similarities, what happens if it gets it wrong and completely skews the baseline data? If the machine is doing all the heavy lifting, why do we even need the human antitrust economists anymore?
What's fascinating here is that your exact concern is why the human economist is actually more indispensable than ever.
Really?
Yes, the econworks sources are very clear on this distinction. Data preparation and antitrust is not just a mechanical exercise. It is deeply strategic. Every single decision made while cleaning that data, choosing to exclude a variable, choosing to merge two product categories, All of that can materially affect the final economic results and, by extension, the entire legal case.
Oh, I see.
AI can clean the data and it can map the relationships, but it doesn't understand context. It can tell you that a statistical anomaly exists, but it has absolutely no idea what that anomaly actually means in the real physical world of business. And regulators will definitely not accept because the algorithm said so as a legal defense.
Which brings us to a really crucial part of the process, which is the outlier dilemma, and why human judgment is the only thing that can validate the AI's findings. Because the AI is going to flag things that look weird in the data, but it's entirely up to the human to figure out the why behind the weirdness.
Precisely. The workflow we are looking at is essentially a symbiosis. The AI performs the systematic computation and the heavy pattern matching, but the human economists provide the vital business and legal context.
Right.
Let's look at a specific scenario outlined in the sources to illustrate this dynamic. Imagine the AI is scanning millions of historical sales records for a merging company, and it flags an unusually high price for a specific product on a specific date in a specific region. To the AI, it's just a dot on a scatter plot that sits 3 standard deviations away from all the other dots. It's an outlier. But what is it really in the real world? The sources explain it could be one of 4 entirely different things.
Okay, let's think about this. I imagine a huge chunk of those are just, like we said earlier, simple data entry errors.
That's number 1.
A fat finger mistake by a sales clerk who hit an extra 0 on their keyboard. Or maybe it represents a temporary supply disruption like, say, a localized strike at a trucking company, or a hurricane knocked out a regional distribution center, so FERC costs just spiked for a week and drove up the price.
Exactly. Those are the first 2 possibilities, and they are largely operational. But the third possibility is that it could be an incredibly important strategic pricing decision. Maybe the company was quietly testing market tolerance to see if they could raise prices without losing customers. And the fourth possibility is that this outlier is actually evidence of fundamentally changing competitive conditions in the market. Maybe a competitor went bankrupt in that region, and the company immediately raised prices.
Wow. Okay.
That fourth scenario is exactly the kind of structural change that antitrust regulators are actively hunting for to prove a company has monopoly power.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Every single one of those 4 explanations requires a completely different response from the economist building the case.
Completely different.
If it's just a fat finger typo by a clerk, you delete it from the data set because it's just garbage data. If it's a hurricane, you probably control for it as an exogenous shock. But if it's evidence of changing market conditions, if they jacked up prices because a competitor died, that might be the smoking gun of the entire antitrust investigation. It makes me think of the AI as, well, like a highly advanced metal detector, and the economist is the archaeologist. The AI sweeps the field and beats loudly to tell you exactly where to dig in the sand. But it takes the human expert to carefully brush off the dirt, apply historical context, and determine if you've just found a discarded soda can or a priceless historical artifact. The machine finds the signal, but the human interprets the value.
That is exactly how the interaction operates in practice. The sources detail this as a continuous, iterative loop. It's not a linear assembly line where the AI just hands off a clean spreadsheet and walks away.
Right.
It is cyclical. The AI processes the raw data and highlights the anomalies. Then the human economists and the legal team step in. They review those anomalies and determine their relevance to the specific legal theory of the merger case. Based on that human judgment, the humans choose which specific variable should actually be fed into the final economic model.
So they act as the filter. They tell the AI what actually matters legally.
Correct. Then they hand the parameters back to the AI, which runs the complex econometric regressions based on those human selected variables. Finally, the AI spits out the statistical relationships, and the humans have to interpret what those statistics mean in the real world.
And whether they hold up in court.
Exactly. Critically, whether they are legally defensible in front of a regulatory body. This loop repeats over and over, refining the model until the analysis is absolutely ironclad.
So once the data is clean, the anomalies are understood and contextualized, and the human AI loop has refined the model, the economists have to actually build their final case to present to the competition authorities. And according to the EconWorks analysis, this is where AI has unlocked a massive, almost superpower-level capability for economic forecasting.
It truly is a superpower, and it's important to understand that this capability is born directly out of the time saved during the initial cleaning phase.
Oh, because they're not manually fixing Excel sheets anymore?
Right. Because lead economists aren't spending 5 weeks writing custom code to manually format conflicting databases, they can now use AI to run incredibly complex, large-scale simulations that were previously just too computationally expensive or time-consuming to attempt during a fast-paced, high-stakes merger review.
This sounds like you're talking about shifting away from static models and moving towards something like a Monte Carlo simulation.
I am. And the application of Monte Carlo simulations at this scale is just a game changer for antitrust economics. Historically, an economist might build a static model, plug in their absolute best estimates for various market factors, and produce a single answer.
Like one definitive number.
Exactly. A single prediction of how the merger will affect prices or consumer choice. But the reality of global business is fundamentally uncertain. A Monte Carlo simulation embraces that uncertainty. Instead of producing a single deterministic answer, the AI runs the exact same economic analysis thousands or even tens of thousands of times.
And what exactly is it changing during all those thousands of runs?
With each run, the AI allows uncertain inputs to vary randomly but strictly within mathematically plausible ranges. So let's take demand elasticity, which is essentially how sensitive your customers are to a price change.
Okay, yeah.
We might not know the exact perfect number for elasticity in a given market, but based on historical data, we know it follows a certain probability distribution. The simulation also introduces random variations for projected marginal costs, competitor responses, and future macroeconomic conditions. The AI mixes and matches all these possibilities stochastically.
So what does this all mean for the final output? Instead of the lead economist walking into the regulator's office and saying, we predict prices will go up by exactly 2.1%, which everyone in the room knows is ultimately just a highly educated guess anyway, what is the result they actually get from the AI?
The result is a comprehensive distribution of possible outcomes. It's a probability density function. It shows the economists and ultimately the regulators exactly how robust the conclusions really are under a wide variety of uncertain future states of the world. If the Monte Carlo simulation shows that in 95% of plausible market scenarios, the merger does not result in consumer harm, that is a wildly more powerful and legally defensible argument than a single static spreadsheet model.
And what is truly wild is how fast this all happens now under the new paradigm. There is a chart in the EconWorks Research Figure 4, for those keeping track, that maps out the timeline compression, and the numbers are just staggering. Traditionally, we're talking about 2 full weeks just for manual data cleaning, followed by 3 weeks of preliminary analysis.
Right.
That is 5 weeks of clock time before the legal team even has a baseline understanding of whether the merger is economically viable under regulatory scrutiny.
5 weeks of incredibly expensive, grueling work. And during that time, the merging companies are essentially flying blind regarding their antitrust risk.
Right. But with the AI workflow, the data shows that early directional insights can be generated in just one day. One single day.
It's hard to believe.
And then robust, deep analysis with Monte Carlo simulations follows in just a couple of days after that. We're going from a 5-week marathon to a 3-day sprint, which completely changes the real-world strategy for you listening, especially if you are involved in corporate strategy or M&A. It means the entire modern antitrust landscape has fundamentally shifted beneath our feet.
It really has. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the speed itself changes the legal strategy entirely. As the research notes, the vast majority of modern mergers actually conclude before they ever reach a courtroom litigation phase.
Oh, really? They don't go to trial?
Usually no. They end through early abandonment because the regulatory hurdles are just too high, or through negotiated remedies, like a company agreeing to divest a specific regional factory to appease the regulators' concerns about local monopolies.
Because AI compresses the timeline so dramatically, companies aren't sitting around for 5 weeks waiting for the economist to finish cleaning data. They can use these Monte Carlo simulations to anticipate the antitrust agency's specific concerns almost immediately. They can test potential remedies in this simulation on day 2. They can say, what if we sell off our European division? How does the competitive landscape model look then? They can walk into the FTC or the European Commission and engage in highly informed, data-backed, strategic discussions much earlier in the review process.
Which is exactly why this fundamentally shifts the role of the antitrust economists. They are no longer just data crunchers spending weeks in a windowless room fighting with formatting errors in legacy SAP systems.
Right.
They are elevated to top-level strategic advisors from day one of the merger announcement. The AI performs the systematic computation and the simulation at scale, but the economists contribute the judgment, the institutional knowledge, and the ultimate legal accountability for the case.
It really is a necessary symbiosis. To summarize what we've unpacked today, AI and human economists each bring totally different but entirely complementary strengths to the antitrust table. AI is unmatched at rapid data cleaning across legacy systems, semantic pattern detection at scale, running tens of thousands of stochastic simulations, and maintaining absolute mathematical consistency. Humans, on the other hand, are required for understanding the legal and business context, interpreting the real-world meaning of an outlier, and actually standing up in front of courts and authorities to defend the validity of those conclusions. You simply can't have one without the other in a modern regulatory environment.
Exactly. But it is worth noting that this is just the beginning of the shift. The sources tease that getting the data ready and running these initial simulations is really only step one.
What's next?
Well, the next frontier in antitrust economics, which they cover in their subsequent research, is using AI to help define relevant market boundaries and actually test specific novel legal theories of harm.
And that leaves me with a rather provocative thought for you to ponder as we wrap up. We've just spent this time discussing how merging companies are now using AI and Monte Carlo simulations to anticipate regulators' concerns and test their defenses in a matter of days. But if corporate legal teams are arming themselves with this kind of predictive algorithmic firepower, how long until the competition authorities, the FTC, the DOJ, deploy their own competing AI to run the exact opposite simulations?
That is a very real possibility.
Are we heading toward an era of algorithmic antitrust, where the human lawyers sit back in the courtroom while two rival AI systems battle out thousands of economic simulations against each other in real time? If the fate of a multi-billion-dollar merger depends on messy data, maybe the ultimate antitrust courtroom drama of the future won't be fought by lawyers arguing over internal emails, but by algorithms arguing over probability distributions.
This raises an important question about the future of evidentiary standards in our legal system. It will be incredibly fascinating to watch how the courts adapt.
It certainly will. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Econ Works. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at Econ Works, thanks for listening.